everyone. Thanks for joining us today in our Twitter Spaces. Today we're going to be talking about restaking security on EigenLayer. Give a quick introduction on myself. My name is Clayton. I'm the Director of Protocol Strategy at Figment and also a partner at Figment Capital. Figment is an institutional staking provider that supports over 40 different proof-of-stake protocols. And Figment Capital is a venture fund that primarily invests at the infrastructure layer of blockchain. To give you a little background on our involvement in the EigenLayer ecosystem. So Figment Capital is an investor in EigenLayer and a partner. And Figment Inc. is also part of the node operator working group on EigenLayer at this time. I'm joined here today with Jessy, as well as Liam from Blockless and EigenLayer. Do y'all want to give a quick introduction on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start first. And yeah, my name is Liam, and I'm the Chief Product Officer and one of the co-founders at Blockless. Blockless, we're building the first modular application architecture to the space and providing builders on EigenLayer with a framework safe, easy, and as quickly as possible, helping people to build on the ABSs. Yeah, and for more stuff, we'll get into the nitty-gritties during our AMA. Jessy, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey folks, this is Jessy. I just joined EigenLayer to lead the developer ecosystem. In our my past life, I was involved in various VC activities. I was hosting hacker houses, and yeah, just recently joined. So happy to answer any questions.
Cool. So yeah, today we're mostly going to be talking about ABS architecture as well as the security that they can receive from connecting to EigenLayer. But Jessy, I think just to get things started, could you give like a brief overview of EigenLayer? I know that there's a lot of complexities, but that would be super helpful.
Yeah, so with EigenLayer, it's essentially a marketplace for supplying Ethereum trust. And what that means is, imagine, Ethereum has 800,000 validators, it has $42 billion in stake. What if you're able to tap into this network and let these operators opt into new services to help you bootstrap new decentralized networks? It could, greatly speed up our open innovation, because currently devs can, easily deploy smart contracts and inherit Ethereum security from that. But it's much more difficult if they're trying to build a secure and robust and stable decentralized network. So essentially, through EigenLayer, these ETH validators and stakers can point their withdrawal keys or stake LSTs onto the platform and opt into additional slashing conditions in exchange for them to operate new services and earn additional yield. So that's with EigenLayer.
And Liam, do you mind explaining, in layman's terms, the architecture from a AVS standpoint? And by AVS, we mean actively validated services. So the protocols that will ultimately be leveraging the security of this restaked Ethereum.
Yeah, certainly, Clayton. I think this is a very important question for all of the developers out here. What exactly is a AVS, right? What are the components? So actively validated services, AVS, it is an application essentially kind of seamlessly integrates both the off-chain networks, as Jessy, you point out, and has the on-chain smart contract components to either validate and slash the result or the operators to control the security in the sense. And the off-chain network obviously is where the bulk of work happens, as we envision in the future where there will be more and more use cases getting onboarded to the Web3 space. So the off-chain network is really thinking of it as the powerhouse of an application, if you will. We have the components in this architecture, such as a runtime, a networking component to orchestrate different workloads between the operators. We have the execution level slashing prevention mechanisms, and obviously the application's core logic. these elements combined together are what we call the off-chain networks. And conversely, on the on-chain component, it really plays a pretty pivotal role in governing off-chain networks. In terms of validating and fortifying the network security via the three set of contracts, really. So we have the validation contracts. We have the slashing contracts to control the slashing of the operators, and we have the that's basically what it is. Yeah.
Cool. And does Blockless make leveraging EigenLayer easier if you're a protocol that's planning to launch?
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of like the whole point of collaborating with EigenLayer, because essentially EigenLayers, the purpose of EigenLayer is combining. It developed a very elegant solution to combine the on-chain smart contracts as well as restakers resources to channel them into the off-chain, where it's kind of like, imagine a dark forest, right? We say previously, Ethereum's mantle is a dark forest, but I think outside of Ethereum, it is perhaps even darker forest, if we say it jokingly. But basically, the purpose of Blockless is to help builders to build AVS in as easy manner as possible, right? And also help operators to understand the risks that are involved in the AVS. Yeah.
Awesome. And so going back to EigenLayer, a project leveraging the security, obviously it can speed up development time. They don't have to worry about so much creating their own architecture. They could use EigenLayer out of the box. But how else is the project benefited from using restaked ETH compared to their own token?
Right. So one thing to know is there is a lot of price volatility with new tokens. And so for a standalone chain that just relies on its own native token, many times we've seen in the past, they go through this death spiral, which once the token value crashes in price, then the security also diminishes alongside the token. Whereas if you're able to leverage a much more stable asset like stETH, any of these LSTs, then it helps you hedge against the death spiral. So with that, we have a thing called dual staking quorum, which means you don't have to get rid of your native token. Instead, you can stake your own native token alongside ETH. So it's dual staking, and you're able to essentially have nodes operated by them staking in your own native token, but also have nodes operated by stETH and these ETH related stake. And so essentially you can, play around with different types of achieving consensus, right? You can have either or set of nodes. If they achieve consensus the quickest, then potentially you'll go with that. Or if it's like one side vetoes the other, then you would, hold until you have consensus, or it can be some sort of super majority based on, like the staking portions. But there's a lot of flexibilities for an AVS or a protocol to leverage EigenLayer that is both beneficial for it to be, easily bootstrapping its network, but also for its own token value accrual.
Got it. And people may not be aware, but there's around 200 million ETH already staked in eigenpods on EigenLayer. But just curious, is it
300 million since our last raise? Correct.
But in terms of how AVSs will be leveraging those, and how validators on EigenLayer will be leveraging that ETH and then supporting these AVSs, what are the roles and how are they matched together? And does an AVS have a choice when working with validators on EigenLayer?
Yeah, so it's two-part question. One is, how do AVSs get stakers. The other one is how do AVSs get operators. So with stakers, essentially it's all up to the stakers which AVS they want to opt into and which operator they want to delegate their stake to. Because EigenLayer does not make the decision for anyone. It's not like an asset manager role. It's really just up to the stakers to evaluate the risks. How many times this AVS has been going through auditing, who audited the contract, like are they actually employing the veto committee at the moment, and how long has the project been, right? Just like any type of do your own due diligence, right? When you're before you're investing into any project, it's the same. We'll probably have like an interface where the AVS can just select XYZ AVS and 1, 2, 3 operator, right? So that's on that side. That part is still work in progress. We have a phase launch of first stakers. So right now, first stakers, second operators, and third AVSs. So right now we've launched the staking mainnet in May, and that entails having a strategy manager contract that passively holds the stake that the stakers are have staked into. And soon we'll launch our operator mainnet, which means that now the operators can permissionlessly register to become an operator. And third is the AVS mainnet, which sometimes in the next year, right? Q1, Q2, we'll see. But once that's alive, then like the AVS, those operators can start operating into AVSs. So that answers the first question. The second question is, how do AVSs select operators? So during the process of development, we do try to bring operators to speak with the AVSs once they're ready with their engineering effort, for them to essentially get operators on board and testing out their software. And it is, obviously the type of operator that you want to choose as an AVS depends on the type of software that you want to run, which relates to the type of hardware that the operator is running. And as an AVS, you can set rules to probably prioritize the type of stakers and the operators that you want, right? For example, one thing that we like to think about is, how do we increase yield for decentralized operators who are home and solo stakers, right? So like, do AVSs essentially pay a premium for attracting these type of operators? And that leads to a more optimal price discovery for decentralization via Ethereum. So these are some of the things that we are thinking about that where EigenLayer can be helpful.
Yeah, Jessy, I think some of just to add a little bit flavor into kind of the mix, because some of our Blockless clients also are pretty fervently thinking about opting into EigenLayer because of the benefits you mentioned previously about restake ETH compared to their own token, high volatility and stuff like that, and liquidity management. So it's a really great option for them to considering, and it's kind of like really delicate relationship between, like you said, 3 parties, right? The operators who manages the infrastructure, the restakers who supplies essentially the security, right? And the developer crafting the applications. All 3 of them are kind of constructed with this pretty delicate relationship. And I think it's important, since we are probably going to channel into the security part. Where does the security place into the story, right? We've been, the market has been pretty eager to discuss more about the slashing risks that EigenLayer, really since the beginning of EigenLayer, people started to talk about the slashing risk, and where does that come into the play. And I think it's really important to think like this is kind of like an evolving process, right? Right now we have, as Jessy, you're explaining, in the early phases, right? The 3 parties are more talking, right, about different preferences and thinking about how to match each other's preferences to make the entire system and make the entire ecosystem work. But as EigenLayer and Blockless, we are working on to refine, I think, the matchmaking process, because this is really the key, to onboard the next million developers to get into the restaking collective and Web3 at large, right? Clay, you must know, like with your extensive experience at Figment as operator, this manual process is still kind of, it's great that everyone will gets to understand each other's preferences, their risk preferences, their reward preferences, right? But ultimately, I think it is our everyone's goal to make the process as easy as possible, as frictionless as possible. I guess we'll be dive deep into how we quantify these risks and how, potentially through EigenLayer's mechanism, through Blockless's mechanism, we can collectively reduces the friction that involved in the process, and making the system as secure, as frictionless as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a node operator who's been on, 50 plus different networks in the past, the goal is to ultimately increase participation on chain through staking. That adds additional security, that provides, more comfort for application developers and ultimately end users of those applications. So, removing complexity, increasing the reward, and removing risk is super important. I think, EigenLayer definitely sits in a place between modular and monolithic sometimes. And the modular stack does add a layer of complexity. I think restaking also does add a layer of complexity as well, especially when there's, multiple ABSs spinning up, or, the risk reward parameters are moving around at any point in time. And us as a node operator, we like to build ourselves as a technical solution to someone else's financial decision. So we don't necessarily.
That's great. That's a great explainer.
Yeah, we don't necessarily tell people what to do, but that being said, I think what's an interesting sort of role within the EigenLayer ecosystem, similar to what LSTs have done in terms of simplifying staking Ethereum, right? Is you may have some sophisticated strategy managers, come out of the space. And Jessy, I'd be curious if you have any, opinions on that, to where people are more trusting a new group of people to, be kind of managing their restaked ETH for them.
Yeah, that can very much happen. I think it's already happening with there's a bunch of LRTs that popped up, like liquid restaking tokens, which essentially what it means is whenever you stake into EigenLayer, we don't give you any token representation back. Unlike if you stake in Lido and ETH, right, you get stETH, whereas in EigenLayer you don't get anything back. Instead, it's just an internal accounting system. And so a lot of protocols have seen this, and wanted to take this forward in terms of from a financial derivatives direction, where you would, as a user, you would stake to their protocol, and their protocol will give you a representation back, and their protocol will stake into EigenLayer, right? So I think the LRTs are actually in a very good position to become these strategy managers, where essentially, if the users don't really care about, and don't want to make the decision on what type of ABS or operator to choose, they could, very easily go with LRTs, and the LRTs would make the decision for them, and choose the ABSs and the, operators to stake into. So definitely it's already emerging. I think there's 9+ protocols that are doing this now. Yeah, but from an EigenLayer perspective, we intentionally, made the decision to not go that route, because we don't want to be, an asset manager or strategy manager, right? For us, we just want to focus on building out the marketplace.
LRTs, I'm just hearing that now, but another 3-letter word that we have to think about moving forward.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's great in terms of, not only EigenLayer kind of the marketplace design, right? It certainly enables the shared security concept, but also it's great to see it's also opening up a new set of arguably asset classes that people can start to think about, not only smart contracts or protocols that's solely based on Ethereum, but also all of the utilities that can be enabled by Ethereum security, which I think will be representing even greater, much greater opportunity set for the traders, for the asset manager that in the space. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Liam, just curious, like what will like in a little bit more detail be Blockless's role in the process of, working with ABSs and building out frameworks and, standardizing, I guess, to leverage EigenLayer?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we've talked about EigenLayer as this concept of the marketplace, right? With marketplace, you have friction, right? And with marketplace, especially when we're dealing with such a novel system, obviously we have the on-off chain system previously, all of the keepers, Oracle networks, and stuff like that, but those are pretty much designed holistically, meaning they are designed from the ground up for a particular purpose, right? And now the ABSs require a more modular approach to the system, right? Jessy, you've talked about a design in terms of how to validate the results, right? And a design where validation of the results can ultimately impact the slashing of the operators and in turn impact the security of the entire ecosystem, right? So I think there exists a really kind of big I guess opportunity, right, for a standardized framework for both the projects, teams, and operators to use. Basically, the framework that we built, it includes the networking and execution level slashing prevention mechanisms, quantifies, providing a basic execution model for the ABSs in a plug and play fashion, right? They can either choose, right, the veto model, they can choose, the PBFT model, which pretty much is equalizing to the majority, right? And they can even choose the ZK model in the future, right? And these are kind of like the modules that we've been talking about, the framework or the building blocks for the ABSs to construct ABS in most efficient, but also most safe manner. And we're obviously going to expand into, the specific security parameters of EigenLayer. There are smart contract security, there are centralization risks, there's execution risks, there are ABS risks, right? We are dealing with basically providing a fail-safe or a first frontier for a lot of these risk parameters, and allowing the operators and project owners to achieve this risk balance, right? Have a base layer of risks guarantee, so that further work or further parameters can be built upon it in this very easy to operate framework. So this is in a nutshell what Blockless role in the process. We are mostly operated in the off-chain network space, so integrating into the helping the ABS to construct the architecture and integrating into the ABS architecture as easy as possible.
Got it. And curious, Jessy, just like, I mean, there's I want to say like 12 projects that have mentioned that they will be leveraging EigenLayer at some capacity once the opportunity presents itself. But I think in the short term, but then potentially thinking about what EigenLayer can look like in the long term, do you think that there will be some sort of standardization in terms of like how much security these protocols will be leveraging from EigenLayer? And maybe another question on top of that is, do you see this as something to where people can bootstrap their protocol by leveraging EigenLayer entirely and potentially moving off of it, similar to like what you're seeing with DYDX moving from Starknet to its own chain in the Cosmos ecosystem?
That's a hard question. Do we see people bootstrapping the network entirely, moving off? I mean, yeah, I think anything can happen. In terms of how much economic security people can actually tap into, as Clayton stated, we have about $300 million in TVL at the moment. That's because we are capped it with how much ETH, how many ETH people can actually stake, but we're definitely expecting a lot more after we continue to raise the caps. And honestly, the amount of ETH in economic security is really dependent on the ABSs themselves. Some ABSs may find that minimum having 100 mil in security is necessary. Others may find that they need to have more. One of the designs that we're proposing is called a super fast finality layer. And what it is essentially just there is a latency problem for optimistic and ZK rollups, and it's like 7 days for optimistic rollup and 12 minutes for ZK rollups. So what if you have users that want instant finality, right, on top of Ethereum? So as part of this design, it's a new layer that essentially can basically it's like the people would settle on this layer, like the users that want instant finality was settle on this layer, and the EigenLayer operators that opt into securing this layer would essentially say that I promise to order the transaction in the way that I was submitted to me, and if not, that I will be slashed, right? And so for this type of design, you would probably need a very high economic security, because you're dealing with very high amount of asset that if there's profit in corruption and people are trying to reorg it, then you would want to increase the upper bound of how much economic security that this layer can actually offer. So maybe like upwards of $1 billion, right? So this is just one design pattern that could need a lot more economic security. Whereas with the other types of ABSs that we have, they would maybe need more around decentralized security and maybe like Ethereum inclusion type of security. And these are, we call them the 3 types of programmable trusts. And we just launched a blog post on this a few days ago, talking about how all these trusts are different and how you would program it. And it's not just all about economic security that you can get from EigenLayer. And I can talk about a little bit more on what these security actually means and how they're different. But essentially, so decentralized trust is a lot of it is, how do you have decentralized set of nodes that are decentralized by geodiversity, right? Because for some of the ABSs, you cannot just build with economic trust. For example, the ones that that need liveness, right? A lot of times you cannot punish non-attributable, non-objective type of faults. So how do you mitigate those types of like slashing conditions? You probably need a centralized set of validators. The more decentralized it is, the more likely your system would have liveness. There's also Ethereum inclusion trust, which is you not only build separate decentralized networks, but you build these so-called like Ethereum sidecars that essentially these Ethereum proposers would make a commitment to saying that I will promise that I will include certain blocks in a certain order, and will construct top of blocks, rest of block in the ways that I promise that I will do so. And honestly, this would also include economic trust, but it's a little bit different. So I'm just bringing it up. Anyway, but at the end of the day, as an ABS, it matters on the type of trust that you actually want to employ, how you would mix and match them. And then decide how many node validators in terms of decentralization do you need, how much economic stake do you need in your system, and how many of these operators do you need them to be Ethereum proposers at the same time. And honestly, this is a question that any network would need to ask themselves, regardless of building on EigenLayer. And in terms of like how you would get that in terms of like in proportion to how much fee you would emit, that would be a conversation for you to talk to the stakers and operators. As in EigenLayer, we don't really have like a minimum set of requirements for how much fees you have to emit. You would just design your system as you do anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a follow-up question about to make the answer even longer, but have a follow-up question in terms of kind of the design for ABS, because Jessy certainly talked about many sort of types of ABSs and the design philosophy for these different types of ABSs. So at Blockless, we have operated in the off-chain network or the specialized network space for almost 2 years now. And previously, we have kind of quantified the security or the different parameters, because in the off-chain space, the reason I say it's kind of like even darker forest than Ethereum's mempool is because there are infinite many parameters that you can opt into, right? You can basically design your ABS however you want, and there's certainly a no limit for how the ABS can behave, and different modules and thinking about application design, there are so many different modules in it that can leverage different trust parameters, different hardware parameters, different geolocation parameters, right? So Blockless, we kind of, the base layer that we have talked about is essentially to eliminate hardware faults. As Jessy, you mentioned, basically, we eliminate the chances of, say, one operator's machine suddenly fall out of the network due to some internet connection issues, for example. We eliminate that from the networking module, and we also eliminate the consensus problem with a variety consensus options for people. As Jessy, you also mentioned previously, essentially we allow people to use PBFT or ZK in a very plug and play fashion for specific modules that that fits a set of consensus. Really, so the philosophy for us and in working in collaboration with EigenLayer is to help people limit the set of choices they want to make. So my question is really sort of, Jessy, in EigenLayer's perspective, how have you guys thought about helping these developers to make the choice, right? Helping developers to think about what are the parameters to think about, even to start to think about how to design their ABS.
Yeah, so there's a few different stages to how like a protocol will become an ABS on top of EigenLayer. And we're doing a few things to help with that. First is we are making ourselves more available. So whether it's through, online Twitter spaces like this or offline engagements, like we have a restaking summit at DevConnect, and we're running a programmable trust hacker house at DevConnect. Or the other thing we're doing is we're publishing a bunch of content coming out. So the programmable trust piece is just the first piece out of our 15-20 part series of, what can you actually build? What are the ideas that you can build? Or the architecture that, the type of design that are frequently occurring? What are some, like Eigen SDK and all these developer tooling and all the open source repos that you can leverage? Just a lot of these, we call it self-serving content and tooling. So this is just the first two. The other ones that we actually provide help on is, as a protocol, if you were to build your protocol alone, then, obviously who you have access is you and your network. Whereas if you do it with us, we've seen enough of these type of designs that, we often hop on a first call or a few first calls with our engineering team and research team to help you think about your design. And, whenever you write your research articles, we were always happy to read it and give feedback to help you in the process. And a lot of times we do handhold a lot of the ABSs through the process. Yeah, so I would say these three main avenues: online, offline engagement, self-serving tools.
Obviously, right now, the ABS design is kind of like a playground, right? It's like everyone can contribute their ideas. Do you think personally, or in terms of EigenLayer's long-term vision, do you guys think there will be a set of pretty standardized design systems for people to opt into, or do you think the current dynamic where pretty much it's kind of like a experimentation, right? All of the different types of ABS will continue for a longer period of time?
Yeah, so I think more or less I would say it will be similar. And I can talk about the parts that are similar, that are going to remain uniform for most ABSs, if not all, and the parts that the ABSs would need a lot more customizability, right? So the parts that would remain similar is that there are two components. The first is on-chain contracts. The second component is the off-chain node software. With on-chain contracts, like as an AVS, you would always have to write your registry contract and your slashing contract. And you would always rely on our various contracts from strategy manager to delegation manager to some of our, payment router and like the contract that would track operator state, right? So these things remain constant. The part that's customizable is mostly your slashing contract, because different AVSs will have different slashing conditions. But even for that, we think that the type of slashing behaviors will be very similar for a lot of AVSs, right? A lot of them will be around double signing, right? There's going to be AVSs that need to rely on ZK type of conditional slashing, which we have AVS service providers like Axiom, right? They're actively building these slashing conditions that essentially, that are provable by ZK, right? Based on the past Ethereum on-chain history. So these remain the same, I would say, more or less. With an off-chain node software, I think that part is like it's completely up to the AVS in terms of the business logic, right? What is the actual type of service that the AVS would need in order for the operators to operate? Some of them will be lighter weight, some of them will be heavier weight, right? But the other components, such as signature aggregation, right, with networking, with cryptography, with events monitoring, all of that, we're actively building templates and libraries in our Eigen SDK to help support AVSs in just adopting that, or making some tweaks. Like with signature aggregation, you can do high variations like BLS, ECSA, and various type of signature aggregation. But I think a lot of it is the value of opting into EigenLayer versus building your own system is that you need these two components regardless. But with EigenLayer, a lot of these components are maintained, are built by us. And it's like a network effect, right? We not only like build with the tools, you can access and tap into the EigenLayer ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, I love that. I think previously the reason why we have seen a scattered quote unquote middleware market is just because I think largely contributes to people where developers don't have a set of mental models or a set of frameworks to rely on, right? It's kind of like pre front end space where people are literally writing JavaScript from ground up, right? And writing servers. But now we have Next.js, we have Vercel to help formulate and to help reduce the number of questions to ask. I think that's the value of EigenLayer and ultimately Blockless in the process for developers.
So one more thing I want to add is the other thing with operators is that previously they have to go through different types of CLIs and different standards depending on the services that they opt into. I'm sure Clayton has some of those comments as well. But one thing that EigenLayer is doing is, because now all these there's network effect with this, right? Because now the operators we all basically follow a uniform spec, node spec, right, where all the AVSs would follow that. It makes operators time much easier as well, because now it's a uniform interface. So once you can collectively build something, it's network effect for everyone.
Yeah. I am not the person who is actively managing the nodes for Figment, but also the person who's actively sourcing opportunities. I think that's definitely a pain point in this decentralized space. You're dealing with completely different pieces of technology, completely different teams, completely different time zones, and I think having this like unified place to be looking for opportunities, as well as like kind of somewhat of a standard outside of the AVS's economics itself is very helpful. I'm curious, like in terms of potentially like the size of the AVS, right? Like there's obviously going to be AVSs that are going to have a large reputation outside of the fact that they're working with EigenLayer on the restaking side of things, and then maybe smaller ones that are yet to find product market fit or have a strong user base. Do you see like a difference in how they would be paying for AVSs based on that, paying for the security of EigenLayer validators? Like, are they going to be paying in ETH? Are they going to be paying in their native token? Should they be paying in stable coins as well? I think the stablecoin route is very interesting, just because, you know, from a node operator's perspective, you know, you're paying for hardware that's, you know, in fiat. And so if there's, you know, the token price goes down 50%, you're ultimately earning 50% less, but you're not paying 50% less for the node.
So again, because with our dual staking quorum, you're able to have a lot of creativity and customizability on those fronts. It really is up to the protocol. But, you know, some interesting designs that I think the system introduced is you can do things like, you know, dynamic fee adjustments based on network demand, right? Like, if at a certain point you want a lot more economic security than the others, you can have, you know, fee adjustment depending on the current demand. You can have like tiered pricing or subscription models to encourage higher volume transactions or like longer term like commitments. You can play a thing where, you know, like early birds get higher, you know, fee emissions, and that, you know, attracts a certain quorum until the threshold is reached, and, you know, you could decrease the amount of fee emission, right? But I think regardless, it's again going to be much easier to build to bootstrap your economic security on EigenLayer, but again, because of the network effect. Because if the stakers with the same cost of capital, they're able to tap into multiple streams of yield, they would go with this route, right? It's a simple market demand game at the end of the day. And also the other thing is we have not only AVSs, but a flourishing AVS service ecosystem. What that means is a bunch of projects are essentially providing services for these AVSs. One of the projects that's doing so is essentially like a matching market. It helps run a auctions market for AVSs where they could play with different parameters. Like, for example, I want X 100 millions of economic stake within X number of days, and this is my, you know, like yield, and you can, you know, real-time adjust the yield, right? Like basically these services to help AVSs have more optimal price discovery of the amount of fees versus how much security they're getting and how much traction they're getting from the, you know, the operators. So, you know, like I think it's just much easier to build on EigenLayer is again the conclusion.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. I haven't thought about that too much, but, you know, as a new protocol that may be part of the EigenLayer ecosystem, you have a lot of things that are kind of out of the box solutions that are connected to your same security framework. Like if you're a bridge, you likely want to be connecting to Mantle. Anyway, you likely may need some sort of ZK solution, and you know, that's all baked within this community that y'all are building on top of restaked ETH.
Yeah, I think from, you know, obviously Blockless as one of the AVS, but also providing AVS services to the projects who wants to kind of build on top of AVS is really great to see, like people having kind of this essentially in an echo chamber, right? People are reflecting each other's requests and needs, and, you know, all of us are waiting to see, you know, or we're collaborating together to see, you know, what are the possibilities, because with this, you know, both flexibility, but also in terms of kind of rigidity of the kind of base model, you know, the opportunity set is really kind of infinite, right? I think, you know, just from Jessy's explainer previously, I haven't really thought about this variable relationship or vary relationship in terms of security versus, you know, the project's size or the project's state, because obviously if an AVS kind of has been there for a long time and there hasn't been any issues with it, its security underlying security premise is of itself is obviously much greater than a brand new ABS who has just been sort of shipped the product maybe a week ago, right? But that obviously tweaks the underlying operator and thus underlying risk-takers' expectations, which we actually don't have those even for layer ones. For layer ones, it's just kind of like one price fits all type of situation. And I think this more greater granularity really provides different optionalities for people. And obviously, people don't need to choose this route, but I think for people for teams who are capable of getting the better parameters, right? I think it's both opportunity and chances for them to thrive within the ecosystem even more.
Yeah. I mean, outside of, the obvious technical benefits, being a part of the ecosystem and leveraging EigenLayer validators is almost like a political alignment as well, or almost like a trade agreement between, other protocols that are leveraging the service.
Exactly. I think, yeah, actually, that's a very interesting question because obviously there will be EigenLayer competitors. Jessy, have you guys seen any EigenLayer competitors? Have you guys, what's your thoughts in terms of potentially competitors popping up, and what's your thoughts on that?
Technically there are, but none of them are really, I think, have thought about this notion of restaking and programmable trust as much, as deeply as, as far as we have. And the reason is, I've interacted with most of them before I joined a team. Really, there is, honestly, I haven't, like, a team in person in Seattle just now, and every single day I learn something new. Every single day my mind is blown by the new type of thing that can be built with EigenLayer, as well as all the existing systems that EigenLayer can, support, no matter what the architecture is, whether it's, we call it modular adjacent, right? Different parts of the Ethereum stack that can be supported. Or we call it, MEV management, or, even like threshold cryptography, or AI inferencing, or, security modules, and just general decentralized networks. I think at the end of the day, like, EigenLayer's core advantage is not only just first mover, but the basically category defining company, but also we just innovate the shit out of everything. Like, I think I'm just again, like, our engineering and like research team, Sharam himself, right, have so many creative ideas that it's just, I really have not seen anyone is able to keep up or catch up with just the fact that we can innovate through all of this.
That's great. Have you guys thought about potentially branching out of Ethereum and supporting even layer 2, or is that or other layer 1 networks in the space, or you guys a firm believer in the Ethereum ecosystem? Tricky question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's not tricky because it's very straightforward. For us, I think the real impact we've had is bringing other ecosystems to Ethereum. And so there's a few layered I would say answer, right? First is obviously with dual staking, you can stake with another layer 1 alongside ETH, right? Another layer 2 alongside ETH. But the second part of it is whenever I say we bring other ecosystems to Ethereum is, for example, Celo, right, is a publicly announced partnership with them where previously they were layer 1, but because of EigenLayer, they become ETH-aligned layer 2, right? And honestly, in our back of our pipeline that we have announced, right, we have more of these ecosystems coming where we basically bring the baby back home, right? A lot of them have proposed a lot of new ideas where Ethereum end up essentially, integrating, but they remain their own separate ecosystem. But now with EigenLayer, we're bringing all these ecosystems back and for them to become ETH-aligned. But I think it's honestly a very straightforward answer is we're sticking with Ethereum and we're helping to extend the greater Ethereum family.
That's great. That's awesome to hear.
Awesome. Are we allowed to take questions from folks who are listening?
Yeah, for sure. I think, do we have any questions from the crowd that want to chime in? If not, we have a few more questions prepared. Cool. No questions for now.
Cool.
Yeah, honestly, I think we've covered a lot of ground. Sorry to cut you off, Clayton. I'll hand you over the mic in a second. I think it's great to hear, EigenLayer has been holding the position, the vision to. I think obviously shared security is a great idea, and bringing other ecosystems back to Ethereum is even a greater one, right? I think for it really kind of ingests hope and ingests a lot of the movement and a lot of the action into Web3, especially when we are dealing with the current market landscape, right? Where Web3 is in dire needs of different use cases, different new blood, really. And it's great to see EigenLayer is contributing to that front. Yeah, and Clayton, feel free to either ask more questions. I think we have several minutes left, or let's see.
Yeah, I think y'all ended it super well. I mean, I have a question for Jessy, and that's if I can come to the Restaking Summit and at DevConnect. Am I invited?
Of course you are, sir.
Cool.
Super happy to have you on, as well as, of course, the Blockless family.
That's great to hear. We'll be there. We'll be there, and I think it'll be really exciting to see how many folks will be there as well, just to really initiate. I think the operator network will be there soon. The ABS network. Honestly, like there are so many folks just DM me on a daily basis asking about the progress, how to build ABS, and I'm basically kind of like a part-time DevRel for EigenLayer at this moment. But I'm excited, super excited to see kind of this collective forces that's moving within our space, and there are folks building AI inference networks that want to get on to Eigen. There are folks building real world assets wants to bridge to Eigen. Those are really kind of like the toughest market, right? Web3 traditionally had feeling difficulties to tackle, and people have been building layer ones catered to these use cases and have seen marginal impact. And I really do believe that was all of our efforts, EigenLayer's efforts in building this kind of ground framework, and our efforts, Blockless effort in building this the more technical framework for those folks. I think really we'll see a lot of those use cases thrive on Ethereum and adjacent to Ethereum very soon. And I think that's all of our hope, really.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think from our perspective, we're very excited to see what comes out here in the testnet in November. But Jessy, Liam, is there anything that y'all want to share with y'all's projects on what to expect in the next couple of months?
Yeah, I think just received a question from Salo Hamdel, another Jessy, happened to be one of our great client, great customer. So the plan for work with Eigen going forward. So I'll probably chime in a little bit, and Jessy from EigenLayer, you can explain a little bit more in terms of your plan going forward in the next few months. I know there are so many movements from your end as well. So basically for our side, next week, we are going to launch our first ABS demo. And we will be launching a ABS Explorer, basically showcase in a intuitive and graphical manner, how these different contracts and off-chain nodes work with each other, right? I think that will be a great pieces of intuitive example for the community to see how the ABS should be designed. And leveraging both EigenLayer and Blockless's systems and designs. And very soon we'll start working with EigenLayer team as well as operators, restakers to start onboarding in the phase one, I would say, different clients who are interested in ABS and starting to work on the designs of the ABS node itself. And that is, I think, not a very hard process, but certainly involves some discussion with operators like Clayton, you guys, as well as EigenLayer team. And then basically we'll be waiting for, I think, this part, Jessy, you can explain better than me, you guys plan in terms of rolling out the actual ABS mainnet. What is the roadmap towards that?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this earlier in the call, but essentially we have a 3-phase launch, first with stakers, then with operators / EigenDA, and then with ABSs. We've already launched the stakers mainnets in May. Now we're very close to launching the operators mainnet as well as EigenDA. And then ABS will be more next year, Q1, Q2. And in the meanwhile, we have many ABSs in the pipeline that have already either built, on-chain contracts or off-chain node software, and they will be, all invited to a restaking summit, which happens in Dev Connect on November 14th, and alongside our Hacker House in Dev Connect. So it'll be a great way to get to meet them and see what everyone's, about. Yeah, so stay tuned for the ABS mainnet in early next year.
Awesome. Well, I think we can wrap up then. I just give you my 2 Satoshis on the Figment Inc. and Figment Cap side. If you're interested in restaking ETH, we would love to speak with you. If you're an ABS planning to leverage EigenLayer, we'd love to jam with you on what you're building on the Figment Capital side. But yeah, if y'all have anything else to say, if not, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, this sounds great. I guess we'll see you guys all at Dev Connect and meet you guys there.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.
See you soon.